Okay, today on Pro Mindset, I have a special guest, Natasha Wilch. Natasha is from Canada. She's a physical therapist. She helps people with concussions. She's a cold plunger. She's a dancer because she dances between science and intuition. So, Natasha, thank you for joining us on Pro Mindset today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so give the audience a better background than I did about what you actually do.
Yeah, I love how you did that intro. I always say I am definitely this blend of science and intuition because I am a physical therapist. And everything I've been trained into this point has been in the science, understanding the neurology, the physiology of our brain. But there's this deeper part of me that is this healer and is this intuitive person and really about connecting with the human that's in front of me to help them make the greatest change in their life. And so the way I package that in my world right now, most often, is the work I do in the concussion space. So I own a brick and mortar clinic in Nanaimo in Western Canada. I also run online programs to train clinicians in how to rehab concussion. And then I work with individuals who are both wanting to rehab from their concussion, but also just want to utilize and understand how we can optimize brain health to live a healthier, more thriving, flourishing life. And so I got into this space, the physical therapy space, because it's what I wanted to do, the concussion space kind of by accident. But when it happened, it relit and connected with this fire in my gut that linked back to my own family history and the stories. And I just am on this mission to evolve and elevate the conversation of concussion in this world. And the skills and the ability to work with that population has also shown me how so much I can serve the greater population. And I always say building their human foundation and optimizing their central performance system, optimizing their brain health so you can live a flourishing life regardless of who you are and where you are.
Okay, so being in the sports business for a long time, concussions have been around forever, especially in football. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they're misunderstood. And a lot of times fans and coaches and players themselves really don't understand this whole concussion thing. And they want the guys to get back on the field as soon as possible. And this last season, there was a young man for the Dolphins, for quarterback, Tua, that had multiple concussions. And I am at fault too. I'm thinking, man, he's a wussy. He's got to get back on the field. What are the things that the football world is missing in terms of understanding concussions and the repercussions of those concussions with respect to coming back too soon?
So that young man, I love hearing this, and I love that you said he's a wussy. He should be back out there. The first hit he got in the game before the one where we saw his hands take that posturing, that's called posturing. That first game, the game a few days before that, when he got hit and I saw him, I was watching the game with my husband. I was like, he should be pulled. That needs to go through concussion protocol, and there's no way he should have been cleared to play because there were balance issues. There were these other things that happened that for those of us that work in it could look at that and be like, that's a flag. When he got the concussion that put him into posturing, that sounds like a significant brain injury. And it caused kind of outrage in the concussion space a little bit. I remember I filmed the reel on that day, and for those that know me could tell, like I was vibrating when I filmed this reel when he was that second hit because it never should have happened. And I think what people forget is you only have one brain. You have one brain. You can get a knee replacement. You can, cast a bone and heal a bone. You only have one brain. And your brain controls everything in your body. And the hardest part with concussion is you can't see it, right? Like you can see a broken bone, you can see bruises, you can see these things. With a concussion, you can't see the injury. It's invisible. It doesn't show up on CT scans, doesn't show up on MRIs. It's diagnosed because of your function. If you don't give the brain time to recover and you go back and you get another hit, you're putting yourself at greater risk of more harm. And
What can that look like? What can that look like? Because let's pretend I'm a coach or I'm a teammate and I'm like, hey, man, suck it up. You can do this. We need you to finish this game. We can't win without you. And let's say that particular player decides, man, I got to do this. He feels the peer pressure. He understands the essence of the moment in terms of this is a playoff game. This is a very critical game. What risk is that young man taking that maybe he doesn't realize?
So I'm going to share a story to answer that one, and then I'll give him a less aggressive answer. We have this day in Canada called Rowan's Law, based out of Ontario. And it comes from an incident that happened with a 17-year-old rugby player. It was playoffs, big game. She wanted to play. She'd gotten a concussion a couple days before and was having symptoms. So she was having dizziness, she was having headaches, but it was huge games in a big playoff season for her team or in her sport. And so she didn't tell anybody. And she went back and played again with this acute concussion, and she got hit again and she died. So she suffered what we call second impact syndrome, which is extreme. It can cause death. That's the severe, like worst case scenario that we never want anyone to experience. More likely what happens is there's over 40 symptoms of concussion. And so the ones people generally talk about are that of like dizziness, neck pain, emotion, like unable to regulate emotions, fatigue, but then there's cognitive things as well, like short-term memory issues, not knowing where you are in space, not being able to organize your thoughts or structure. You can't handle finances anymore. You can't organize your life. And so this is going to sound terrible to the sports world, but a game is a game. And yes, there's money involved and it's a business, but is it worth potentially putting someone at risk to not be able to function in the rest of their life for years to come? And I say years to come because people with concussion, or when you think of concussion, there's still this myth that it's like 3 days later, you brush it off and you're back in real life. Craig, my clients fly to come work with me who've been dealing with this for years. My last client was just here and it's been 7 years. My client before that, it's been 10. My client before that was 18 months. But people don't realize that concussion symptoms can last months, 2 years. And those symptoms, it equals job loss. It equals loss of family. It equals inability to work to make a financial living for yourself. You wake up every day feeling like you've been hit by a Mack truck. You can't organize your thoughts. You're dizzy, so you can't do the things you want to do. It leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. Is all of that to someone's life worth one game? That would be my question.
Obviously not. Obviously not.
Yeah.
That's an easy answer.
Yeah. But I can appreciate too, like, especially for a young athlete who, like all those things, that's where the education piece is not being done well enough. Because when I say these things, a lot of people, and I host a gala up here in Nanaimo for concussion awareness to bring this awareness to the table, because that's the biggest thing is people who are like, I had no idea. And so I think when I say I want to, on this mission to evolve in the conversation and culture of concussion, it's the awareness piece. It's the education piece. It's the understanding that if you play a sport that has a higher risk of concussion, because football does, and we know that, but that you understand if you have this injury, the steps you need to take to recover properly. And that if you don't do that, what risk are you choosing to put yourself in?
Right. So really it's a game for the individual to weigh the rest of his life versus the rest of this game.
Yeah.
And when you put it in that context, it's a pretty easy decision.
Mm-hmm. I like to think so.
But a lot of guys do come back and play in the games because they tough it out and they don't die and they don't have these repercussions for the rest of their life. The question is, do they want to take that risk?
The unfortunate thing is we don't know why still some people go on to develop persistent symptoms. right? That's where a lot of the research is kind of focusing right now is why do some people recover in this normal 2 to 4 week window of time? And why do some people take years? And so, I mean, there's definitely, we now know what certain risk factors are in the initial concussion that will predict a longer recovery. We know some personality characteristics that tend to link to longer recoveries, some socioeconomic characteristics that tend to link to longer recoveries. So we have ideas of things that can and may predict a prolonged recovery, but we don't know for sure why someone takes years and someone takes weeks. And so it is that risk factor of, that we used to say that 80% of people with concussion recovered in like 2 to 4 weeks. That was the stat we've quoted for years, which is a pretty, that's a pretty high risk, a pretty comfortable margin to be like, yeah, I'm going to be good. But some of the newer studies coming out with pretty big numbers are showing that actually individuals with 43 to 56% of individuals with concussion still aren't back to their normal baseline or their functional baseline 6 months after the initial injury. That's a really big difference than 80%. So we're starting to see some new numbers and some new research just about how prevalent some of these persistent concussion symptoms are. And when you look at the US alone, there's up to anywhere between 1.5 and 3.8 million reported concussions a year. So this is a huge thing in the world.
So how do we minimize concussions without quitting sports? Because even soccer and basketball and some of these so-called, nonviolent sports still have a nature where they're going to be, contact and collisions and things of that type that allow them to have concussions. I mean, even in soccer, you can get a concussion from the ball on a header or hitting somebody else's head thinking you're going to hit the ball and you hit their head. So what is your perspective on how do we make the games safer? Because we don't want to give up the games. We don't want to we don't want to say, oh, we're not going to have rugby anymore. We don't want to have, hockey in Canada is pretty big. So you don't want to say, hey, we're going to quit playing hockey. So what do we do?
Yeah. Like I love sport. Like my son races BMX and plays baseball and like does all this other stuff. So all for sport. In this place of football in particular, I do think that in our younger ages, there needs to be less contact. So I don't know what the rules are in the US around tackle, but to me, tackle shouldn't be happening until you're older because your brains are developing so much in adolescence. Like you don't want to get a brain injury when you're 12 years old. So to me, sports like hockey, sports like football, tackle or big hitting in hockey should be delayed. In football, in soccer, there should not be heading of the ball in those younger age groups because it's not worth the risk. In the older ages, like when we're looking at more professional sport, to me, no two concussions are alike, right? So you and I could be running and playing the same sport and we could be hit with the exact same mechanism and you might get a concussion and I might not. And again, we don't necessarily know why that happens. Some predictors, when we look at the athletic world for sure, is, does neck strength play a role in this, right? And if the mechanism of a concussion is the acceleration, deceleration force of the brain. And so the thought process is that if you have a stronger neck, this is one of the thoughts why women are more at risk for concussions. We have longer necks that are usually weaker. If you have increased neck strength, can the muscles of the neck absorb some of that force to decrease the force to the brain? So that, and again, there's studies that show that yes, there is, and there's studies that show it's not. We don't know for sure, but that's one of the theories. The other theory is that if you have the ability in your athletic skill to take in your world and see your environment better, to predict movement, to be able to respond faster, to avoid a giant hit or being swiped from an odd angle, then you're going to be potentially safer risk. So that would be things like looking at your vision therapy, looking at able to improve the neural performance of your visual system and your vestibular system, so that you can respond faster, react faster, and that piece of things. An example of that, I won't clear someone to play. I had a hockey player who, when he was pretty symptom free for the most part, except that his peripheral vision on one side of his body was compromised. So like he could see, like he had full peripheral on the side, but he was like 45 degrees. And that had been since his concussion. And so there was no way I was clearing him to play, because if I did that, he would miss everything that was happening on this side of his body, which puts him at higher risk of injury again. So that's one piece of it too. And then equipment. So there's no helmet that can stop a concussion, but equipment is being utilized to help basically absorb the forces. So that way you can, again, it's less transmission of force to the brain. And then it's education. It's understanding what a concussion is, how it happens, and when you need to be smart to either stop playing or continue playing. But we don't have any die-hard, here's what you need to do to prevent a concussion yet. It's like, what skills can we do? And then the other thing I always say is your baseline function matters, right? If there's someone whose body is riddled with inflammation and they're already not super healthy and they're eating like crap and they're not taking care of their body and they get a concussion, versus someone who is healthy and eats well and prioritizes sleep and all these things that we know optimize brain health, the person who's probably going to do better is this person, because they're starting from a more optimal place. So then the other piece for me is take care of yourself. Prioritize the things that we know, especially as a professional athlete, like take care of your body, take care of your brain, so that if you do get an injury, brain or anywhere else on the body, the fact that you're in a healthier state to start is going to help propel your recovery forward.
Have you ever consulted for a professional organization or professional league to this point in your career?
It is a dream. I haven't to this year. At this point, actually, so there was a group of us that went and worked with the Seahawks training team. So we went and I got to be, it was my mentor actually and he brought me with him. So there was 4 of us that got to go work with the training team for the Seahawks to talk about just neural performance and those skills I talk about in terms of understanding how you can actually look at the visual system, how you can look at the vestibular system, how can we look and see that our players know where their bodies are to best function and perform. So we did do just a training weekend with the Seahawks training staff, which was amazing and so much fun. But that is honestly, that is a dream of mine.
That's awesome. Well, let's switch gears.
Yeah.
You're like a package of dynamite, okay? And share with the audience what you do with these cold plunges and why you do it and how it benefits you.
Gosh. So I preach the cold plunges. I preach the taking care of yourself because I did it and I do it. So Western Canada, right? I'm on Vancouver Island. And so I have Pacific Ocean. Well, it's not the ocean on that side, but I have ocean right there, like my back door. And I started cold plunging in December of 2021. And actually, the reason I started cold plunging was because my anxiety was through the roof. So I was at a state in my life where there was a lot going on. And I woke up every day feeling very nauseous, and I had brain fog, and I couldn't organize my thoughts, and I had trouble executing things, and my memory was not great. I was forgetting things. It was a really hard season for me. And
you just described concussion syndrome symptoms.
I
right
sure
there.
did.
Holy smokes! You're absorbing your patient's symptoms.
Oh, except that I know what the stressor was in my life at the time. So, and I had read about cold plunging, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. And so, with snow on the ground and ice on the ground, I went in my toque and my towel, and I went to the ocean, and I went in. And it amazes people because I was that person who loved being on the water but hated being in the water. And I started going, and I literally started for like 30 seconds the first day. But that first day alone, like when I came out of the water, I felt my nervous system start to settle. And I went for that month of December, like for that end period of December, I went every day. I was the crazy person. I have this picture, Craig, where it's like you see me in this crystal like ocean, and then there's snow around me as I'm in the water. And I went every day. And it was, I talk, when I speak about the central performance system and the human foundation, I'm really speaking about the autonomic nervous system. And I always talk about like, let's find, when we're trying to find change, and you know this more than anyone, like, let's try and find the one thing that's going to give us a little bit of traction. Let's try and find the one thing that's going to let us feel like we can get some grounding with our foot to take the next small step. And for me, that was cold plunging. And so it was a huge tool in helping, because what it does is it provides this opportunity to stress the nervous system and then regulate the nervous system ultimately. And I started doing it every day. And I met a friend down at the water. She would like walk by and be like, "Hey, friend." I have no idea who she was. To this day, I don't know her name. And I just like wave from the water. But it became part of my everyday life. And it had so much impact in me and being able to help me find that grounding and help me find that clarity that then I could stack on the next thing I needed to do to take care of myself and my own health. And so what cold plunging does ultimately, and when you look at it, it helps with increasing blood flow. It helps with decreasing inflammation. It helps with mood. It helps with circulation. It helps ultimately with regulating the nervous system, and the nervous system controls all those other functions. For my migraine clients, with my concussion clients, I get them to a lot of them to cold plunge because it helps with decreasing pain and migraine as well. So I did it every day for months. And now I probably do it about 3 times a week just because of my schedule, but I love it. I will like preach it and recommend it to everybody.
Okay. So that's something we have in common. I have 2 boys that are crazy and they cold plunge and they, challenge dad to do it. And I did it one time. My son bought actually a horse trough and put it in the back patio and holds about 120 gallons of water. It's not the ocean, but we got it down to 31 degrees multiple times because of just the weather we have during February. It's still out there. And I've been doing it probably about 5 days a week. And when I don't do it, I take cold showers. So my question to you is, because I think when you look at cold plunging, there's some markers. One is, what's the temperature? The second one is, how long do you stay in it? Because the first time I did it, I could only stay in it 40 seconds before I thought my feet were going to, my toes were going to explode off my feet.
Yeah.
It was so painful.
Yeah.
And then the last one is, how much submersion do you do? Is it full body? Is it up to your neck? Do you have your hands in? Some people do, some people don't. It's a lot harder with your hands being submerged than not. So what are the answers to you and your experience in cold plunging?
Yeah, great question. So of the research that is out there that I've read, so I'm going to talk in Celsius because I don't know Fahrenheit. So we might have to convert. So anywhere, some papers say it needs to be 12 degrees and colder for the physiological benefits. Some people say 16 degrees. The ocean here, when I started doing it, it was 3 degrees Celsius. I have no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. What I say to people when I start to get them on a cold plunge is, because as you do it, you can go colder. But what I say to people when we're starting is, especially if it's a shower, you want to go until you feel like you're like, that's cold. And then that's where you start. Don't worry so much about measuring the temperature, because then as you get used to it, you'll be able to make it colder. The other key, whether it's a shower or whether you're submerging, the key is to regulate your breath while you're doing it. So a lot of people get in the beginning and they like run in and they're like, holy crap. And then they don't breathe and they shiver and then they run out. And that's not how you cold plunge. The whole point of it is to get into the water, ground yourself, control your breath and your breathing in the process, which helps you regulate to tolerate that cold. And then you can increase the duration of time in there. So 12 degrees or colder. Again, some studies say 16 or colder. Time-wise, in an individual session, there's been no physiological benefit found to be in there greater than 5 minutes. If you're pushing greater than 5 minutes, you're really pushing into a mental resiliency piece, which has benefit, but the physiological benefits on the body don't extend past 5 minutes. And then some of the researchers and some of the stuff you'll say, you really only need a total of 11 minutes during a week. to notice some change. It has compounding effects for me, right? So the more you can challenge your system and regulate it and challenge it and regulate it, you're just continuing to build that dynamic nature and that capacity of your nervous system. So for my clients, I try to say work up to a minimum of 2 minutes a session. And I'll say start at 30 seconds and we'll build in 30-second increments to a goal of a minimum of 2 minutes a session. You don't have to go any more than 5 minutes a session. Was that for timeline wise? And then there's cold shower versus immersion. So I find showers more challenging, to be honest. I find them way harder than immersion. So cold immersion, if you're going to immerse, you actually want to try and get up to your neck, and it's because of the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is otherwise AKA our wandering nerve. You see a lot about that especially in social media right now. The vagus nerve is this big nerve within our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the one we're trying to activate to help have this calming effect. And so because of where the vagus nerve ultimately is, ideally we want to submerge to our neck as much as possible. When you submerge, if you're really still, what actually ends up happening is you form this kind of like warm pocket around you. So if you want to keep it cold, you kind of just want to move your arms a little bit to keep the water flowing around you. A shower, I'm always just like, get it cold and tolerate what you can because it's coming over you anyway. So you don't have to get your head wet. You can just start with your back or your body, or you can do your whole head if you want. And then hands. So some people really struggle with hands and feet. Like they really do. And for those that pain of hands and feet is the reason they can't come out, you can we'll actually recommend you can get like gloves, or you can get like booties on your feet, which don't take away from the experience, but it's an adaptation to allow you to stay in the water a little bit longer so the rest of your body can be immersed in the water. So people with Raynaud's or circulation issues sometimes can have a difficult time with that, and it will feel like their hands and feet are burning for sure. If that's happening to you really quickly, and that's the reason you need to come out of the water, you could look at either just keeping your hands out of the water. So I have a friend that goes in and he just keeps his hands out because his fingers hurt too soon. Or I have another friend who got gloves and booties as well. And a few other people have gotten booties to support the joints and the fingers so that they'll allow them to stay in the water longer.
Well, one of the things that I found is that when you cold plunge, there isn't anything else that I'm going to face during the day that's more difficult. And I've accomplished the most difficult aspect of my day. So it resets my mind about, what I got to get accomplished that day, because once I do that, I feel like I can do anything. Mm-hmm. Your perspective on that. What is your greatest one benefit from cold plunging that's changed your life, your attitude, your health?
I'm going to say it's my resiliency. It's my capacity, same thing. It is the thing. Cold plunging forces you to be present. Right. And I think in this world, we spend so much time thinking to the next thing, or if you're an anxiety person, you ruminate over what can go wrong, and cold plunging forces you to be in the now. I think that's been the greatest gift for me, is it forces me to come back, to be present, to connect back with who I am, my breath and my body, to show that strength in myself, to then carry that forward to the rest of the day.
So the very definition of mindfulness is being in the moment, being present. And I think that cold plunging shows you what that means. It helps you. You can feel it. You have no choice. I mean, when you're immersed in the water, you have to be in the moment. You can't be thinking about your to-do list.
No. If you are, it's not cold enough.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've got some buddies doing it too.
Yeah. If your mind can wander to the to-do list, you need to make that water colder.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, so kind of move into the next thing. I want to understand, we're about pro mindset. And pro mindset is effectively being your best self in the biggest moments. And sometimes when people fly to come see you and they've been dealing with something for 7 years or 10 years, their big moment is when they're with you because they're hoping that you have a solution to something they haven't been able to solve. So that is kind of like a Super Bowl moment for you in the sense that you have this potential impact you can make on a client, on a patient.
Mhm.
How do you work on yourself? How do you prepare yourself? What is your mindset? And how do you show up being everything you have and everything you are to help that person in their big moment too?
Oh, that's a great question. My favorite stories are of my clients. I don't remember their clinical outcomes. I remember the stories of Natasha, I was able to play with my 3-year-old son again. Natasha, I am now in a place where I'm healthy enough where I feel like I can start a family. Or I had a client send me a picture of his brand new big rig and he never thought he'd be able to drive and work again. And he's like, Natasha, he's like, here I go. Thank you. My clients that return back to sport and then crush it. Those are the things that I remember. And my clients will email me months and years later to continue to share the wins in their life because of the experiences we shared together when they were here. And so, yeah, those moments for me are massive. And for me to be in a place, and this is the blend of the science and the intuition, because a human is not just a system, right? There's emotion, there's feeling. And so for me, I need to be able to show up in a position where I can hold space for my client in whatever they need. And I think that's where I'm different in terms of a clinical standpoint. It's kind of like I've helped clients they've had an emotional breakdown in my room because that's what they needed. That was the space they needed held. And then once we could clear that and move through that, their physical things skyrocketed. And so for me, it's being able to, this is why when we talk about like our keynote with Anthony, this is for me why I talk about the central performance system and human foundation, because as a clinician, as a coach, I need to be in a place where I'm strong in my foundations to hold space, be clear-minded and creative to support my clients and their plans. And so morning routine for me is crucial, which is always like I meditate, I do red light therapy, physical activity and exercise is key, nutrition, cold plunging. It truly is practicing those habits both morning and evening for me. So I have a morning and an evening routine that stays pretty dang consistent 7 days a week. There's some flexibility, but those routines are a discipline. And showing up and being disciplined in that way, I know puts my brain and my body and my spirit in a place that I can hold space and be creative and be resourceful and think quickly to help my clients maximize their potential.
I love that. Do you do breath work as well?
Sure do. So I do a couple different types of breath work, to be honest. So I do like meditation, and then I'll do an active breath work practice usually once a week with my coach as well. So I have a breath work coach. I have a coach, like I have a business coach. I have a breath work coach. I have a therapist. I believe in team. I don't think we're meant to be on this earth and do everything alone. And I think when you surround yourself with people who share a similar mindset and really want to celebrate and bring each other up, then that's when you continue to also like unlock this whole other level of you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a weird question that just popped in my head as a follow-up to what you just said. How much of the residual repercussions of a concussion are emotionally charged as opposed to scientifically? Because you said, we have our science, we have our anatomy, and then we have our feelings and we have our emotion. How many times do your patients feel victimized because they got a concussion and maybe derailed their career, maybe limit them from doing certain things in their careers. And they now feel like a victim. Now they have an emotional attachment to that. Now they're stuck and they can't move forward, but their physical symptoms really aren't what they think they are.
Mm. It's common, but I would caution in saying, don't ever say your physical symptoms aren't what they are, because regardless of the root of the symptom, it's still very real to that person. And too often in a persistent concussion, they are hearing it's all in your head, just your anxiety. It's just because you have depression. So they hear that all the time. And so what's key in the approach that I take with my acute and persistent concussion clients is I do what is this multi-systems approach and this multimodal approach to care. And the key for me is determining what are the root drivers to why you're having symptoms, because regardless of what the root is, these symptoms are real to you. So we need to figure out where they're coming from and address that, right? Tylenol, if someone has headaches, there's like 7 different kinds of headaches. Tylenol is a Band-Aid. It's not addressing the root, right? So what is the root of what's leading to these symptoms that you are clearly having that are impacting your life? And let's address that root. So for some clients, it's very much the physiology piece, their vestibular system, their visual system. For some clients, it is heavily the emotional piece. And for some clients, and for I would say most clients, it's a mix of both. But the issue and the key is that it's identifying what is it within, if the mindset piece, if the emotional piece is part of it, what is it within that? Is it that they feel victimized? Is it that there's a loss of identity? Is it that they're stuck in grief or anger? Is it the narratives that they're telling themselves and the stories? Is it past trauma that's come up and acting as a block? Because all of those things will absolutely impact the recovery. And so for me, I always put on my detective hat, and the job is how much of this is physiology and how much of this is mindset and psychology. And I have assessments to help me figure those pieces out.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep dancing around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the athlete wing, and when you described your morning routine, you described your coaching team, you described the importance of, basically having a program so that you can be your best self. If you were like, let's take your son.
Mm-hmm.
How will you coach your son, or how are you doing it now as he grows? Is he in middle school now, or is he in elementary school?
He's elementary school. He's turning 9 next week.
Oh, well, happy birthday to your son. And so as he moves into that preteen age, there's going to be pressure to play sports or do activities or, establish his identity with his friend groups and things like that. How are you going to coach him and mentor him so that he can have a healthy structure to his day?
Yeah. So right now he's at the stage where, in terms of sport, if he shows interest in trying something, we explore it. We're very big on commitment. So if you commit to a sport, you're going to play the season, unless something like catastrophic happens. But example, like last year we started to play baseball, and he was kind of waffling at one point, and I said, no, like we committed to this team and we committed to this season. So you're going to play this season out. And if you don't want to play again after that, that's fine. So values of commitment and showing up and that team approach, we instill in him now for sure. We're on a BMX race team. Same thing. You cheer your team on and you show up and you support. In terms of habits and lifestyle right now, there's a piece of, we have consistent bedtimes. We have consistent wake times. We have a routine in the morning that he follows consistently every single morning so that there's no like racing around. We're starting the day in a very intentional, grounded fashion. Same thing before bed. We have a routine before bed. And then right now I'm at a stage of just trying to introduce and invite him to other habits that I know serve him. So an example is meditation. And so in our home, I have like a meditation, I call it a meditation nook, right? So I have a setup where I have like my rug and like my candles and all that lovely stuff. And I've always invited Hudson to come sit with me, and to do a meditation with me, and not forced ever, but it's the invitation's there. Buddy, mom's going to come do a meditation. Would you like to do it one with me? Sometimes I got a yes, sometimes I got a no. But now we're at a state where he'll come up to me and he'll say, "Hey mom, can I go sit and light the candles?" And I'll be like, "Absolutely." Or I'll walk into my space and he's already sitting on the rug just having some quiet time to himself. So at his age right now, we have morning and evening routine. It's short, and and that stays consistent, but it's also in this place of trying to introduce other tools, but not force them on him. Journaling is another thing we do. We got him a journal. And so sometimes we'll do evening journaling together when he initiates it. Right now is really important to me. And then when we're talking about things like mindset and narratives and beliefs, really helping him to create a safe space to work through how can we process and talk through emotion instead of bottling it up and pushing it down. Because if we bottle it up and push it down, it's going to erupt or show up in our life in some other way. So starting to instill in him now, you like mom and dad are safe people. Like you can talk to us, like let's work through this together, and not pushing something down, but facing it and then working through it together. And so honestly, my goal is to continue to build that out. And then as we bring in sport, continuing to support good values and routine for him too.
Let's pretend for sake of discussion that there's a listener out there that doesn't have a routine. Mm-hmm. And you talk about you have to, establish traction by changing one thing.
Yeah.
What's the one thing they could add to their game? One thing they could add to their morning that would give them the biggest impact to give them the confidence to try other things?
I always say to someone, it needs to be something that you're not going to dread. So I don't actually care what it is. I don't care if it's every morning you get up and you just drink a glass of water, or you get up and you do a 2-minute cold shower, or you get up and you sit on the side of the bed and you close your eyes and you root your feet on the ground and you take 5 deep breaths. I don't care what it is, as long as you don't dread it. It needs to be something that you see the benefit in and that you're willing to commit to consistently. The key is you pick one thing that's a small thing and you do it every single day. For me, when I start, and know that just because you pick something now doesn't mean you can't shift it and evolve it down the road. So for my morning routine, for the longest time, we got a puppy. And so my morning routine became getting up. And the first thing I did every morning was walked around the block a couple times because I had a puppy. So my puppy became my motivator, honestly. And then I would layer my other pieces in. So for me, hands down, the biggest needle mover has been cold plunging, without a doubt, 0 questions asked. My biggest foundation builder, get my traction and go. If you don't have a lake to plunge in, if you don't have a trough or an immersion tub, start with cold showers. But the key is just picking one thing that you will do that you don't dread, because if you dread it, you're not going to do it. And do that thing consistently for a month and then layer something else on. I always say, if you actually listen to your body, it's going to tell you what you need, and it's going to tell you when you need to layer the next piece on. But it's that just start with 5 big breaths sitting on the side of your bed, getting present in that moment, and then take that next step.
Amen, sister. Okay, so for someone out there that would like to have you as a speaker, or some organization or some mom or dad that might have a child that has some type of concussion issue, how can people find you?
So social media would be Instagram. So it's at natasha.wilch, which it is all me. That's the easiest way, or my website, which is just natasha-wilch.com.
Thank you very much for your contribution today. Learned a little bit about concussions and the seriousness of them. Having a couple boys that still play football, it's something that I think of from time to time, and clients as well. But I want you to have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for tuning into Pro Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed the listen, please leave a 5-star rating. If the message was a vibration you connected with, and you have any friends, family, or colleagues who would benefit, then please share this episode with them. You can follow Pro Mindset Podcast on the following social media platforms: Instagram and YouTube, Pro Mindset Podcast; Twitter and Facebook, Pro Mindset Pod; LinkedIn, Pro Mindset. We will drop our shows, Pro Mindset Podcasts, every Wednesday morning, and we invite you to listen and subscribe. Also, don't hesitate to check out our archives to listen to previous shows. And finally, I encourage you to embrace a Pro Mindset truth from today's show. It just might be the key to unlock the pro inside you.